Hey friends, welcome to the Kids Ministry Circle podcast. Kids Ministry Circle is a community for kids ministry leaders to be encouraged and equipped to love and serve the local church. I'm your host, Lauren Jackson. This week, we kick off our 2-week mini-series all about Advent and Christmas. It may seem a little bit early, right at the beginning of October, but it's the best time to start thinking and planning about the Christmas season. And it just so happens to be my favorite season in the kids ministry world. In addition to our podcast episodes, we will also be talking about Advent and Christmas and celebrating volunteers and all the fun things that happen throughout the month of December over on the Kids Ministry Circle Instagram and Facebook pages. You do not want to miss these next 2 weeks as we cheer you on as you head into one of the busiest seasons of ministry. So don't miss out. So to kick off our Christmas mini-series, I knew we had to talk about Christmas music and how to plan the perfect Christmas performance because let's face it, those cute little kids up on stage singing songs, it's just the best. And there is no one else I would rather have on this episode than your friend and my new friend, Yancy. Yancy is a worship leader, songwriter, and producer of hundreds of songs that make Jesus loud. She is a powerhouse at leading and teaching kids from birth to preteen on how to worship, and she creates popular worship resources for the church and homes around the world through the Little Praise Party and Kid Men Worship series. I hope this episode gets you in the Christmas spirit as we talk about her brand new Christmas musical that you can get and use for your ministries this season. So on to my conversation with Yancy. Yancy, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here today.
I am so excited that you're here. I can't believe we have not met as of today. And yeah. I have obviously listened to your music. I've played your music and it's so fun to have you on the podcast today. And I feel like it's a special episode because kind of over the next course of the couple weeks, we're going to talk about all things kids ministry, Advent and Christmas. And so I'm so excited that you're joining us for this special episode. But before we jump into all things Christmas, why don't you tell us about yourself? Talk about your family. Tell us about how you got into the world of music and kids ministry, and maybe tell us a little bit about what your ministry is up to today.
All right. How many days do we have to talk about all of that?
I know.
So much. So I live in Nashville, Tennessee, and I am married. We have a couple of boys. So I have 2 boys, 12 and 7, Sparrow and Rhythm. And I've been making music now the last 25 years, which is kind of fun, like completing my 25th year of ministry. And music is just always something that I knew, I say from the time I was single digits and kind of fell in love with singing. There was just something that I knew inside me, as confident as I was what my name was. I knew God had put me on this earth to do music. So music had always been the goal and the thing that I was working towards, and just, the place that I served in the church and all of those things. And, I did my first concert. I started going to Nashville, recording, and traveled and did a lot of youth groups for, actually, I kind of did the math yesterday and kind of had one of those moments. So I guess it was about 10 years of music making before I officially started making music for kids. And really, God just led me through a bunch of easy yeses, is what I like to say about it, where it was just like, hey, write a theme song for summer camp. And so I wrote the one song and a whole year went by, and then it was like, do that again. And then there was a season in here where I was working full time at a church in Tulsa, Oklahoma, on staff leading worship. I say from birth till death, because I had my hands in worship for all the ages, from students and young adults, and leading worship even on Sunday morning for our main congregation, to overseeing our preteen worship and elementary. And the very last thing that I took on was preschool, which is how the Little Praise Party series came to be. So even that first Little Praise Party album actually made just as part of my job. And it's kind of like God gave me vision for some of these areas, like as and after even I had taken the first steps of doing it. And I say all of that just to highlight what an amazing creative God that we have, because the flip side of that story is that I am a preacher's kid. I'm a children's pastor's preacher's kid. And so I grew up around children's ministry my whole life. But I can tell you, never once did like I ever have a conversation with my parents where it was like, hey, what if you took this music thing and the children's ministry thing and mixed those together? Like, that was never our creative blend and idea. But once I got into this season of life of overseeing worship for some of these ages and making that little praise party album, and actually even made an album for kids, not committing that it was a thing. Even separate, the album Loud and Clear was a bunch of those camp theme songs and songs that I'd sang on What Is Now Orange as an organization for Reggie back in the day, and recorded a handful more. And so anyways, God and his amazing creative cleverness totally took the two parts of my life and put them in a blender. And, looking back on it now, it's like, well, like that's actually so smart and so brilliant to just kind of take my whole life history and the legacy and the ministry of my dad and mix that together with music and, continue on and my own way doing the thing that God called me to do. But certainly with an emphasis on kids and families. So,
yeah, I love that story.
An abbreviated version.
Yes, I love that so much. And I think what stands out to me is kind of what you were talking about of just like how and I feel like we hear this a lot with ministry leaders of like, you feel like you're doing one thing and then you're like, yeah, this is exactly where God has me. And then God's like, okay, now here's more. And here's like the other side of what I had always had for you. You just couldn't see it. And
I will add to that a layer of, I realize that there can also be peace in the midst of tension. So in those couple of years that I was on staff at a church, in my mind at that point, I was going to work at that church for the rest of my life. Yeah. Like, that's just the way I saw it. I knew I was supposed to be there in that season, but they were also in a big transition of styles and, kind of where they were focusing the music on age group wise. And so, I was part of the change, but I was also then therefore right smack dab in the middle of the chaos of the situation. And so there were times in life that I would be in my office and I would think, why did I go to Nashville? Why did I go learn to write songs? Why did I go meet, with A&R directors and figure out how to produce, music and projects if I was going to work at this church the rest of my life, And it was like, I was almost questioning, did I miss it somewhere before? Like, did I not hear God's voice correctly somewhere else leading up to this point? But yet at the same time, there was peace that I knew that's where I was supposed to be. And so it was, once I got to that next step and that next phase, that was kind of the beginnings of life as I now know it. Then once I got into that, it was like easy to see, okay, I understand now. Like I needed to work at a church. I needed to actually lead other worship leaders and worship teams and mentor them and develop them and, go through all the processes of what a church leader is dealing with, and doing ministry. And so I needed that side of things added to my tool belt. Yeah. Mixed with knowing how to write a song and record it and make, great things. And, again, it's just putting all those pieces together to then finally going like, okay, this makes sense. And this is what God had for me all along.
I love that story. I think it's such a good reminder to kids ministry leaders who may feel stuck in their role or may feel like there's more for them. And I think it's just a reminder for all of us of like, hey, sometimes God doesn't give you the full picture at the beginning. And even for you and hearing your story, it's like, oh no, you started like you were walking in obedience and then God said, okay, here's another piece and here's another piece. And I want you to learn this part of music and recording, or I want you to learn this part so that eventually you'll be here. And like, what I'm excited is like, well, what's next? Yeah. In 10, 15 years, like who who knows what else is going to come your way and what else you're going to be able to accomplish. And so that's just encouraging. And it's really sweet to hear that story. So it's exciting. Okay. I do want to know, are you still doing adult stuff or do you just primarily focus on kids?
Yeah, good question. So, I mean, I would say in this current season, pretty much I'm just doing stuff for kids. I got to lead worship for adults at a preteen conference with 456 earlier this year. But it is certainly much fewer and farther between now that I do anything for people that aren't part of a young family. So
yes. Now, let me ask you this question. Mm-hmm. Do you prefer preschoolers or elementary kids?
They're very different.
You're like both.
I mean, both, because for me, I make different music for the two age groups. So it's totally different songs that, therefore it's fun. Like, it's fun to get to sing this song, but it's fun to get to sing this song. Preteens, so I was going to actually say preschool. The thing I would say about it is it's so unpredictable because you can attempt to do the same thing that you've done before, even within multiple services. And it just is going to go down differently every time because you're going to end up with that preschooler that's just like is on stage with me without being invited, or, is like twirling, for no reason. So preschool is certainly unpredictable. I will say that. But it's fun. Yeah. And it's totally different than what I'm trying to do with a preteen. So it's like, it's like just they're opposite things. Both and.
Yes. Okay. I'll accept that answer. That's fine. Okay. So switching gears a little bit to Christmas. Mm-hmm. I want to know. I know you came dressed to impress. Okay. I want to know, what are some of, when you think either back to your own family or maybe like you and your family growing up, what are some of the favorite Christmas rhythms or traditions that you guys had as a family, either when you were a kid or now?
Yeah. And I mean, I feel like, as a kid, I think it's just the going to look at Christmas lights. We would load up in a minivan with another family and drive around town, do that back in the day. So that's always fun. And I have a sister. And so, growing up, we were big shoppers. So anything involving Christmas shopping is going to be a great time. I will say one of the most fun little traditions that I've started with my boys the last handful of years is we kind of do like a staycation at some point in the month of December. It's just like one night we go stay at a hotel downtown Nashville. It might be paired with like going to a Christmas concert or, a special Christmas activity or event or something that's happening downtown, where we might even be able to walk to it and then stay at this hotel. But that has proven to be a really fun pause, because let's be real, like Christmas is just busy. And like sometimes it feels like December is moving so fast, we don't even get to enjoy it and don't really get to do the fun Christmassy things that we're setting out to do as a family. And so that pause to just take 24 hours and just go be with them and make some fun memories together has probably been one of our highlights the last few years.
Yeah, that's so sweet. I love that. Yeah. I think like with us living so close to Denver, there's a lot of Christmassy things that happen in the city. And I'm sure that's the same way for Nashville. There's so much going on in the city, and to just kind of take a break as a family and go and adventure in your own city. Yeah. That's super fun. I love that. Yeah. Okay. So I have to admit something to you. Mm-hmm. I grew up in the kids musical world, like church musical world. So I did that.
You're like a pro.
Here's the thing. So I grew up doing it. I loved it. Yeah. But then as I started my own kids ministry career in Colorado, and primarily in Denver, I thought Christmas musicals were no longer. I thought they had like phased out. Yeah. Now, clearly I was not in the South, and Like, I did not know that churches still did this
Mhm.
until I got to know other ministry leaders from other parts of the country
Yeah.
and people who still put on giant
Yeah.
performances.
Yeah.
And it fascinated me because that's obviously the world I grew up in, but
Mhm.
it's not like I never did a Christmas musical. Now we would do like I would practice with the kids and do some Christmas songs with like some bells a couple Sundays before Christmas. And that was always a really fun time. But I never entered the Christmas musical world as a ministry leader. And
Yeah.
so when you announced your Christmas musical, I was like, I've got to talk to her about it. I need to hear some more details because I'm fascinated at the
Yeah.
people who find time to put this on with all the other things that they're doing. And so
Mhm.
I would love for you to kind of give us a sneak peek into maybe why you decided to write this, what
Yeah.
excites you about it, and maybe just some like background info into all the fun details.
Yeah. Well, totally. So, okay, Christmas music is my jam. I love me Christmas music. I've gone to the Amy Grant and Vince Gill Christmas show here in Nashville many, many times over. And some of my favorite music that I have made, it certainly is like my Christmas album and some of the Christmas songs. So, Christmas music is always like my happy place. And I'll be honest, like me getting to do this musical is, I kind of say it has been the best like dream come true that I didn't know I had, because it wasn't a door that I was knocking on. It wasn't something that I had
Mm-hmm.
on my short list of projects of like, do a musical. Like it,
Right.
like it just wasn't something I was trying to do and set out to do. I mean, truthfully speaking, I have come from most contexts of ministry that aren't in this space. So I do not claim to be like a choral music pro by any means, but I love Christmas music. And so a guy named Dave Clark, who he's like a creative director for Lilith's Music, but he wrote a lot of CCM songs that I grew up on in the 90s and 2000s. Just lots of For Him and Phillips Craig and Dean and, just that era of
Mm-hmm.
CCM music. And so, I knew of him. We have some mutual friends. So I knew of him as a successful songwriter. And he reached out to me because he works at Lilith and has made a lot of these Christmas musicals. In past years, I don't even know for how long he's been doing the choral music projects, but he reached out to me and was just like, hey, would you at all be interested in writing a Christmas musical for us? And so I think just because of who he was and
Mm-hmm.
knowing, what his history and what his successes look like, mixed with my love for Christmas music, it was like,
Right.
sure, like just tell me more and, draw the box for me of what this is supposed to work in. And I know like a kid's musical could mean a lot of different things as far
Right.
as the intensity of it and how long it is and all of those things. And kind of what Lilith Music, who I did this for, kind of what they specialize in offering is more of what's considered an easy 25-minute or so kids musical, that a church can put on, thinking about it more so like, okay, if they only have Sunday mornings to rehearse this, for
Right.
months leading up for Christmas, like, could they pull it off? And so all that to say, I was like, yes, let's do it. And so kind of thought through a few different ideas and concepts of what the storyline could be in the musical could be.
Mm-hmm.
But Best Christmas Song Ever with Yancy. It's a easy 30-minute Christmas musical. There's 5 brand new songs that I wrote specifically for this. And yeah, it's been really fun just to kind of, I would say for the most part, I approached how I wrote these songs and that creative process the same way that I always would for any of my music. Of course, putting it through a filter and knowing that it has to, it's not going to be me singing all of these songs,
Right.
but other kids that are singing it, and, just making that fit with the storyline. And, I was still able to weave worship in there for like, what's our ballad song. And so that part's very true to who I am, as well. And then I actually end up appearing with the kids for the last song. I can explain the storyline more if you want.
Well, my question was, does the storyline point to Jesus, or is it more like Christmas song focused?
All the above.
Okay.
Okay. So the general gist of the storyline is that it's like a group of, kids that are a band. And so they are like hanging out after school. They're using their music teacher's classroom as like a place to practice their little garage band or whatever. Mm-hmm. And their music teacher, who could be played by the children's pastor or whoever at your church, finds this video of mine posted on social media where I am asking people to submit to me songs that could be the best Christmas song ever for like a little contest of sorts. So that starts these kids on a journey. Of course, being in the music business, I'm like, this is not how it works. You don't just write a song on the spot, but it's the stage.
It's musical magic,
Just start thinking and imagining, and just these songs just spill out one by one. These kids write these songs.
Wow, so, these are incredible.
Yeah. And so it's just kind of that thing of like, as they're working through kind of their own, one character, of course, struggles more with fear and just kind of that concept of like, we could never do this. And like, it wouldn't be good. And, all of that. And one person is much more like wants to just be in the spotlight, wants it to be all about them. But then, they're also thinking through layers of the Christmas story and kind of imagining, okay, so what about the shepherds? And so there's a song called Sheep Dance where kind of works a psalm.
Oh my goodness. That's
Psalm
so
23 cute. Into that, and just about following God's voice, and where the shepherd leads, we will follow. And so, kind of take a moment for that. There's a song called Do Not Be Afraid. That's that character that's struggling with fear. And, just what's the thing that is said repeatedly in the Christmas story is do not be afraid.
Yeah.
And so there's a song about that. And then our little All About Me,
drama queen.
So, yeah. Nellie Nelson from Little House on the Prairie, I think. They're like that character that's just like, it's all them focused. They work out and figure out this is where the worship side of things comes into play, that the best Christmas gift. And actually, okay, sorry, I'm doing a bad job of explaining this. So obviously I appear via video on these social media videos a couple times about the musical. So at some point, as a piece of encouragement to them, as they're submitting the songs for the contest, I also point out to them just like the best Christmas gift you could give Jesus is who you are in your heart. And that's your song of worship. And so, sorry, that's how that character kind of gets to that moment. And that's our big ballad. It's called I Give You My Heart. And just realizing our offering of worship is the best gift we could give. And so kind of mix even, Oh, Come Let Us Adore Him into the end of that.
Cool.
And of course, then like after that's kind of the climax of it. And so, of course, these kids did an amazing job of writing these songs.
Yes.
And so I don't want to record just one of them, but all of them.
Cute.
And then I want to also invite them to go on tour with me. And then we perform the last song together. So I'm performing the last song with them via video, singing along still with their performance, whatever. And so.
Yeah, that is so fun. I can see.
That's the gist of what it is.
Yeah, I can just see so many fun things that you could partner with this musical of like have it on a Sunday night and like do the musical and then set out like cookie decorating stations or hot chocolate or like providing like giving discussion questions for families to do. You could even do like dinner theater type thing where it's like maybe you do an activity, the family sit around the table, they do an activity, they watch the musical, and they have another act. Like there's so many ways you can be creative.
Even like have a talent show type thing where kids get to perform their skill set or whatever.
Yeah. I love that. I'm like, let's just bring all the musicals back, you know? I'm like, let's bring it back.
Of course, like this isn't officially happening, but my dream of what could happen, since the musical's only 30 minutes, I would love for some churches out there that do the musical to also bring me in live. And it's almost like the musical could open up for like a Yancy Christmas concert type of a thing.
Oh, that would be fun. Do you travel? Do you travel a lot in the Christmas season?
Yes, some years more than others, but since I've made a Christmas record, which has been quite a while back, traditionally I have always done some family Christmas concerts in December, which is fun. And I've always set those up where like your kids could sing a handful of songs with me if you want more. And that in the past was always done kind of making it easier on someone if they have to have the kids on stage that month. Okay, if it's only a couple of songs or 3 songs that they're learning, participating with me instead of putting on a whole thing.
Yeah.
So, you know, a lot of churches, that's kind of what they've been interested in with it. But I think it would just be super fun to like mix the two things together and have a church do the musical and then me actually like close out the show.
Be there. You could actually like sing that last song with them live.
I know.
Oh my goodness. That sounds so fun. Like churches could do like a whole like Christmas night of worship with Yancy, and that would be so sweet. Yeah. I love that idea. Okay, ministry leaders listening, get out your calendars. Reach out to Yancy. Find a date that would work to bring her in to do a Christmas concert. Okay, my next question is for those ministry leaders who are listening to this, who are like, I am not musically gifted at all. And I have been asked by our senior leadership to do something for Christmas. What do they do? Where do they start? What are some things that you could be like, okay, think through this, or think about just doing something small, or maybe they're not ready to do a whole musical. Maybe they just want to have their kids up on stage on a Sunday morning singing a couple songs. Like what, if someone's been tasked with this, like, hey, it'd be fun to do something for the kids for Christmas. What do they do?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it literally can be everything from as little as do one song with your kids and let them get on stage and perform that. Might look like a couple of songs. It might look like doing best Christmas song ever with Yancy for 30 minutes. But you totally can do it. I mean, music with kids is so much easier than I think most adults think it is. So you can do it. I would just say, you know, find you a song, and, you know, in addition to the musical, I think I have like 18 other Christmas songs. Some of the most popular ones that I know churches have performed is It's Christmas Time and Best Present Ever. And, Not About the Weather is a fun one that I wrote about the fact that like in Australia it's summertime. Not everybody has a white Christmas, and it's not winter. And so one verse is summer, one verse is winter.
Oh, that's cute.
Even the mixture live, like I've done it with having like beach balls going out during the summer part and like the fake snowballs going through the sanctuary from the winter part. Like I think like from a stage perspective, like there's so much you could do with that song.
Yeah.
So yeah, you totally can do that. And I think it's just figuring out what practice is going to look like for you. And I know a lot of churches that they do, like they just take a portion of their large group time on Sundays for those 6 weeks, 8 weeks leading up to whenever that performance is. And they, you know, carve out, I mean, as little as like 15 minutes a Sunday or something, go over those. A few things that I would recommend is just one, and let me back up and say this, that practice is what happens at home. Rehearsal is what happens when we're all together. And so definitely put tools in the hands of your kids and, really their parents. So email them information about what you're doing, give them links to a playlist that's going to have the rehearsal materials or, whatever that might look like. If you're in choral world, as they really aren't into a lot of streaming, they're still wanting you to hand out physical things. And so like, whatever practice materials look like, but like put that in the hands of your parents and just spell out for them what's happening and periodically update and remind them like, them actually listening to that music or going over it even once a week outside of church is only going to, double your practice time for what Sunday morning could look like.
Right.
So I do have a pro tip I would recommend. So, and I've only because I've seen this firsthand at my church where they've like practiced for the Christmas performance they're going to do. And they like do that instead of the game that they would normally play at the start of service.
Yep.
And then they go into worship. Don't do that because from an attention span perspective, even though it's something totally different, it's the exact same activity. So, for a good chunk of the portion of the kids, to them, it just feels like more singing. And if that's already what they've been doing for the last 15 minutes, it's just a really bad place in your service to then go into your normal, like praise and worship time that you might be having. So that's just a suggestion as you lay that out. It could look like something different for everybody, but realize how similar those two things are to your attention spans. And, it would be so much better to have that rehearsal be at the end or even relocate where praise and worship is in your service. Yeah. Go on into a lesson or something else and follow up with the music just to separate those two things. Yeah. Because it feels the same to probably majority of your kids. Right. So that's that suggestion. And I'm trying to think here. I mean, find you someone that loves, props. So it might be someone that normally helps you decorate for VBS. It's like, it's that same sort of like brain and skill set that talk to them and like show them what you're trying to do. And, is there a set? Is there a backdrop? Are there some costumes? Like, are there some props? Just how I illustrate this to make it be fun and not just be your kids on stage singing. Even though at the end of the day, I think for most people, parents and grandparents just want to have that photo op and want to have that video on their phone for the years to come or on that social media post where they can just see their kid up there. And so that's your biggest win at the end of the day. And just have fun with it, And I will share this as well, because I think anytime that you're like the leader, the conductor, the choir director, or whatever, it's very much like parenting, where you like feel like I say the same thing over and over and no one listens. And so if you feel like you're constantly giving like the same critique or piece of instruction of like, hey, sing it like this, or like y'all need to smile more, or like whatever the thing is. Just a suggestion would be even videoing them and letting them see back the video.
Ooh, that's a good idea.
I stumbled upon this in that season that I was at the church. I had a group of kids that were we had a Christian school, and they helped me out with the music that happened for our chapel. And there was just some days that we had a little bit of extra time to fill because we were doing all familiar things. And so, granted, this was back like when American Idol was like on its A game, but ended up like dividing them up and letting some of the groups like perform for the other ones. And, their peers then were like giving them pieces of instruction of how to make it better. And funny enough, they said a lot of the exact same things that I always told them.
You're like,
But, it's that whole thing of like, they could see it with their eyes, which I also could then, coach them through it and point out, hey, do you notice that's actually something I tell you guys all the time? And it's just that whole seeing is believing. And so that's another just layer of leading them and teaching them that I would recommend is divide them up and,
Yeah.
split it up and let them experience it. And they will probably say the exact same things that you notice and highlight.
Yeah. And I bet performing for your peers may calm some anxieties when it comes to performing for adults in a whole crowded room that you may or may not know. I have multiple stories of my own life and my own childhood of like having major stage fright. So been there. But I will say I'll like kind of adding on to that piece of performing for your peers is giving some space for some creativity. I think over the years, one of my favorite moments or some of my favorite moments have always been during a dance break in a song where the kids just get to like boogie. And it is the funniest moments. And those are the things that you're like, oh, remember that sweet boy who danced his way off the just like fell off the stage because he was dancing so hard. Or like those kids who
and probably
like
brought the house down. You know, that one kid that had everyone.
And those are some of my favorite moments that it's like, okay, not every moment of the performance has to be this controlled piece, but if you just give them some freedom to dance or sing, or like you even think about like worship for kids and just giving them some moments to like feel it out and be themselves and add some creativity. That's always really fun for me to see of like, okay, you've got like 2 8 counts to like dance and they're just like cool. It's so great. I love those moments. Okay, my next question for you is, do your songs specifically, the ones that you said Christmas, and you could answer this question for the musical songs too, do they come with hand motions? Can you find the hand motions? What's that side of things?
Yeah. The musical, yes. I know they provide that in the resources for the musical. I'm thinking through because there's been so many various Christmas releases on my end of things. A few of the little praise party ones have some official motion tutorials that I have provided. Some of the other things don't, because I haven't released them in the resource where I have that. But then there's always people along the way that have posted motions that they created.
Yeah.
And you can normally do a quick little Google search and find somebody else out there, or a handful of people that have motions they've created for some of those songs. And truthfully, like with a few of the little praise party songs of mine historically, the newest things I know have given motion tutorials. But before that, honestly, it's such concrete lyrics that I always tell people, I'm like, if you can't figure out to point to your face when you're smiling, and to your ear when we're talking about hearing or listening, and like it's like Captain Obvious lyrics because of how concrete what I'm singing about and talking about is. So I feel like you're naturally pretty compelled to do something when you sing that. And so it's also, I feel like they are some of the easiest songs to just make up your own emotions for it. That's what's needed. But
that's so great. I think you gave so many good tips that I feel like any ministry leader who's on the fence, who's like, I don't know if I can do it. Christmas is a lot. I'm not gifted in the musical world. I feel like you gave so many tips and so many little snippets of wisdom that it's like, no, you can do it. You can do it. If that's what you feel like God is asking you to do, and what the direction that you want to lead your ministry in for the Christmas season, you can do it.
Yeah. And it's something I share sometimes in breakouts, but I think it applies here too. Just to highlight what it is that you were saying is that believe in yourself. Because I think sometimes like we're our own like worst like judge, and it's just have confidence that somebody has given you the role that you have. So it might be, it might be a children's pastor. It might be a family pastor, a next gen leader. It could be your senior pastor, it could be a board, but someone of some level of authority put you in the position that you're in. Yep. And so they believe in you. They believe in your ability to hear God's voice. They have entrusted this to you. And so why are you crouching behind saying, I'm not good enough,
Yeah.
when someone has handed you a key, given you
Yeah.
codes, like whatever the thing is, and said, hey, this is where we want you to be planted and we want you to bear fruit. And so sometimes I think it's as simple as you just believing in the ability that someone else has already entrusted into your care and just saying, I'm going to do it. I'll
Yep.
make it happen. And I
Yeah.
think sometimes we're our own worst, judge and the person to hold ourselves back.
Yep. Yep. That's so good. I normally right now ask the question, our last question that we always ask is, if you were talking to someone who is brand new in kids ministry, what would be your words of encouragement or advice? And I feel like you literally just answered the question, which is so good. It was so encouraging.
I
But is there
do
any,
have something else
okay, that's what I was going to say.
I planned for that.
Yes. What
And
would
that
you
is
say?
So years ago, I had a girl that came up to me at the end of a conference where, like, in a last dinner conversation, her children's pastor had handed her the reins of worship, but she had not gone to any of the sessions about that, in the preceding couple of days because she wasn't over it. And she was just like, "What's one thing you could tell me?" And I thought, really quickly in that moment, and what came out of my mouth, I still stand by and believe in, and that is that there's freedom in preparation. And so I think in the context of music and children's ministry, very often it's easy for people to like basically play Russian roulette with their worship sets and just stay in the booth on Sunday morning and just pick songs at random, yell out to somebody else that's standing by there, what do you want to sing today? There's literally no rhyme or reason to it. And I am such a believer in, okay, let's take the time to pray about it, to think it through, to plan it, earlier in the week at minimum, weeks and months ahead of time.
Yeah.
On the good days. But there is just, I've stepped on stage when I knew what I was there to do and was prepared and ready for it. And I've also stepped out on stage knowing I didn't know a song as well as I should have, and opened my mouth and, the chorus came out when it should have been the verse, or, whatever wrong thing. And so I just realized that as a ministry leader, as a worship leader, you're going to be able to do more and actually communicate more effectively and touch hearts if you've taken the time to do the work and prep for that day, that service, that worship set, the musical, whatever thing it is. So
that's so true. And I think for like to go down to the specifics of Christmas, like you can't throw kids up on stage just willy-nilly either. Because that doesn't make it exciting and for them. And so if you are like, this is why we're having this conversation in September. And this is why we're talking about Christmas and Advent so early, is so that you can think about it. You can plan and say, hey, if this is the end goal, if our end goal is to do something fun for kids on stage at Christmas, well, then let's start preparing, because you never know who these little kids are who will one day be the next Yancys and be the next worship leaders. And that preparation will give some space for your kids to thrive on stage and feel confident. We want kids to feel confident when they're worshiping God, whether they're on stage or in a classroom. So I thought that's so good. That's so encouraging. And that just applies. I'm like, that applies to everything. I'm like, prepping your curriculum, all the things, prepping for a volunteer meeting. It applies to all the things. That's so good.
Don't fly by the seat of your pants.
Yes. We've all been there, but we all say, don't do that anymore.
Right. Save it for the 911 emergency day, and don't. Church happens 52 weeks a year for most of us. And so that should not be the norm of how we facilitate ministry happening.
Yeah. Okay. This is a big question. Where can people find you? I know there's lots of ways. What's the easiest way for people to hear more of your encouraging words, to read your book, to look at your curriculum, to listen to your music? What's the easiest way for people to learn more?
Yeah, of course. I think ultimately the best place would be go to my website, yancyministries.com. If you want to learn more about my book, Sweet Sound, you can do that, yancyministries.com/sweet sound. If you want to learn more about Heartbeat, which is my curriculum all about worship, yancyministries.com/heartbeat. In my store, there is a link at the top of the page that will take you to the musical. This is the one odd thing in life that my ministry is not the one that is distributing that and selling it, but Lillian's Music, the choral publisher that I did it for, is. But I've got a link there to take you to it at the top of the page. And then would love for you to follow me on social media. Whatever thing, if I'm doing it, I use the name Yancy, not Nancy. So Instagram, Twitter, X, whatever. I'm not very
whatever it's called
up on that currently, but things stop talking to each other, so it doesn't have any new things. Facebook, you can find my Yancy page, facebook.com/Yancy, not Nancy, will take you to it, and would love for you to stay in touch with me those places and
that's great.
Follow along, because there's always new stuff that's happening and things that I'm sharing about what I do. So
yes. And we'll make sure we link all the show notes, all the things that you talked about in the show notes, so that people can find, it's an easy access to go to the show notes, find the link for the musical specifically and your website, and follow you on the socials. So it'll be super easy. So you can head there. But Yancy, thank you so much for being on the podcast. It was so fun to kind of hear a little bit of your story and hear your exciting things that are coming this Christmas. And so I'm just grateful for the work that you're doing and can't wait to see more.
Thanks for letting me share about it. Enjoyed the time very much.
Friends, I don't know about you, but this conversation with Yancy made me want to go click play on my favorite Christmas music playlist. The music is one of my favorite parts about the Advent and Christmas season, and the truth that we get to sing at home, in the car, and with our church families on Sunday morning and throughout the week. I hope you enjoyed this conversation, and maybe this conversation that you listened to gave you the confidence to do something around a Christmas musical or a Christmas performance with your kids and families this Christmas season. You can do it. And just like Yancy said, just be prepared. Think about it, plan for it, prepare for it, seek God's wisdom on what you should do, and enjoy it. It's fun. It's so exciting to get kids up on stage worshiping God together. So whatever you decide to do it well and do it with joy this Christmas season. All the links are in the show notes. If you want to know more about Yancy's music, where to find her musical, where to find her curriculum and her book, it's all listed in the show notes. So you can go right there and add some things to your cart today. If you want to continue the conversation and keep following us as we continue to talk about Christmas and Advent resources, you can head over to @KidsMinistryCircle over on Instagram and Facebook. It's going to be such a fun next 2 weeks. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.